Hi, happy Learnuary! Last video we learned to crochet a chain stitch, and this video is the next stage. We're going to learn to single crochet to add rows to your chain stitch. Enjoy!
If you've made it through chain stitch, then if you've made it through chain stitch, you're going to be ready for single crochet. And what that is basically I'm going to start adding a row to create length. And my chain stitch will be my foundation, my starting row, okay? And however many stitches wide you want your project to be, you can go ahead and stop there. So, and then one of your stitches is going to be lost. So if I said I wanted to have, I didn't count this, but if I wanted to have 60 stitches, and I did 60 stitches, then when I start my single crochet, I have to skip one, so really I'll have 59 stitches. This matters a lot if you're following a pattern or if you don't want your rows to turn into a triangle as you keep going and reducing. So if I want 60 stitches, I need 61, because that last one is going to end up being the width of the row, because I'm going to skip it to, or the height of the row rather, because I'm going to skip it to start my first stitch. So to know where I want my first stitch, usually the most common way to do it is to identify, skip one V, and identify the next V shape in your crochet. And it's a little hard when you start your chain stitch, but it gets easier as you have a body of stitching. And I want to go under that V like it's a bridge. And then I want to pick up my yarn through there, again holding the feeder yarn like when I made the chain stitches. So I want to go under that V bridge and pull out one, and now you'll notice we have 2 loops on our crochet hook. And so to finish the single crochet stitch, I need to pick up another loop and go through, and the single crochet is finished when I have 1 loop left on my crochet hook and I'm ready to go to the next stitch. So again, I'll identify my V stitch in the top, and this takes a little bit of effort, but I want to get my hook under both of them. The reason it's taking me a little effort, even though I'm pretty decent at basic crochet, is that it's the first chain doesn't have a lot of meat to hold on to. There's no rows yet. So I'm going to go through that, and I should see 2 stitches, 3 stitches. The first one is the one that I went through, that I'm holding from the last stitch, and then the 2 here are the little V bridge that I tried to find from the stitch that I'm going through, but they're not a stitch held on the hook yet. I'm going to get a new stitch by looping around and pulling it under that V stitch. Now I'm partway through the single crochet, but I'm not finished yet because I need to pull 1 more loop through. And now I'm finished the stitch, and you'll notice that each stitch that I finish makes a new V on top, and that will be helpful for the next row to identify the stitches. Alright, so I'm going to do the next one. I'll talk through it again. So I see the V on top, right? One of the reasons that I'm using this for teaching, I'm using a softly variegated yarn so that we can identify visually a little easier. This is the stitch I was holding when I'd finished the last stitch, and now this is the chain row that I'm going through, and I'm going through, so I have 2 loops. Some patterns you might want to only go through the back loop, but it creates a different effect. Okay, and then there I go. Now sometimes what you'll find is like one of your loops is too big compared to the other one. You just pull your tension and straighten your crochet hook, and you'll get them to even out. Alright, and I'm not finished yet with my single crochet stitch. I need to pull 1 more through, and that's going to create another V on the top of my row. Alright, do that again. Pick up, and pick up the V. I'll show you again. Pick up that V right there. I want to go through both of them. And then I want to hook a stitch through. Now I have 2. In order to complete this, I need 1 more. And that's completed another V. Okay? So I'm going to go a little quickly and work through my row now. I will not fast forward this. I'm just going to let you watch it real time because maybe the pace of seeing me work through it will help understand it. So it's a little complex because I have to think through both, you know, finding the stitch I'm going through and holding it and maintaining the tension. And I know that all sounds like a lot to think about, but it becomes more intuitive as you, you know, practice crochet and get a feel for it. And again, this first row is a little difficult because I'm managing the chain as the base row, and it just doesn't have a lot to hold on to. The next time I go through, I have this thickness to grasp, so it's going to be a lot easier. Like, I want to make sure I'm seeing those V's on top and not accidentally going through the back row. It'll create a little bit of a twist in the fabric. See, now I didn't know where I was going to go through next, so I'm just going to straighten out, have a clearer look, and go, okay, so this is the front and the back loop of the V. There's my 2 loops, one more through. So I actually think that crochet is the first thing you should learn before you learn knitting, because a lot of, even though it's not exactly the same, a lot of the understanding about how a loop holds another loop, about the shape of a V that shows in the stitching, about tension holding, about catching the string and pulling it through. All of these actions are similar in knitting, and crochet is a little less, I don't want to say finicky, but it's a little more robust. You don't have to hold a whole set of open loops every row. Each stitch you make, you close it off, and now it's not, even though it's relying on the other stitches you made, it's not relying on the needle the way that a knitting needle does. So I really feel like if you're just starting out with stitchery, this kind of needlework, crochet is the place to start before you learn knitting. It's also easier to start out if you're younger, and just getting that dexterity in your fingers to do all the, you know, don't just do chains for a long time until you can get them nice and even. And if you're clever with them, you can make necklaces. You can pre-string some beads on your string and create some clever things that way. You can do chains and then chain your chains together to make chunkier necklaces. You can use your chains, if they're nice and chunky, to sew together to make little mats and baskets. But a chain stitch, you know, it might look like not much, but there's a lot of foundational understanding in making the chain stitch. All right, so I've gotten to the end of my row. That's my row 1. So I did a chain stitch and I did row 1. Now you'll notice, I'll try to hold this straight up, this is facing the way that I finished it, so I got to the end on this side. You'll notice that there are V's on top. If I pinch it, you can see that row of V's on top. And you'll also notice that there are V's on the front, right? That's why I'm saying, like, I think it's very foundational to see and understand the V shapes in the stitching. All right. So what's going to happen is I need to flip this to complete the next row. But before I do, I want to chain one, because remember, if we don't chain one, when we turn around, we'll have to skip a V to create the height of the row. And if we keep losing a stitch, then you won't have, you know, a kind of a straight up rectangular sides. You'll end up with a diminishing diminishing row count, which will create a triangle. Okay, so here we have one extra stitch that we made a chain on the end. Now we're going to go back to single crochet, and you're going to see me go a little faster because unlike the chain, which was hard to grasp, I'm going through the single crochet tops that I created, and it's much easier for me to grasp because I have a row below it. So I'm just going to try to go a little slow at first here and show you the top. There's that V. I want to go through under that V. I want to pick up a string from my feed, and that creates that two loops that I'm holding. I want to get another loop and go through, and that's when I know I've completed the single crochet. So again, I'm going to go through each one. And don't worry if you drop your stitches and go through something. I'll just show you as if I've messed up and dropped. What do I do? What is this? I don't know. Like, I can try to hook both loops, but if I just hook one on top and pull the other one out, then it's easier for me to start the next stitch again. Just start clean, because I can understand that if I have too many loops going on or whatever. And so this is called ripping back. If you found out, oops, I skipped one of my V stitches and now it's going to reduce my row count and I want to go back to the one I skipped, it's just called ripping back. It just undoes. If you don't have a very fancy highly textured yarn, ripping back is much easier. Another problem I usually see with somebody who's just starting out is that when they go back and they're having, you know, some struggle picking up the thread because of tension control, they'll go through the string like in the middle of it instead of picking the whole thing up, and they end up with kind of a snarl. You can just crochet right through that snarl, but it creates kind of a little bit of a mess in the back. I don't know if you can see those loose threads. So if you get a snarl, just rip back a little bit before it gets tangled. You know, smooth out your yarn and go ahead and start that stitch again. Another mistake that's common, so the one I mentioned was by accidentally skipping a V. If you do that quite a bit, you're actually going to create a corner. It kind of pulls it up in construction and creates a corner. So it's actually a method if you've got a pattern for creating a corner, but if you don't want a corner, you don't want to skip. Similarly, you'll create a corner going the other way if you accidentally double up your stitch and put it in a loop, in a V bridge that you've already used. Now you're going to create kind of a, like if you think about going around a track, you know, if you go around the inner track, it's shorter and the outer track is longer. Well, if you create a situation where there's fewer stitches underneath and more stitches on top, you're going to make a rounded situation. Or, you know, it might look even in a longer row, but it's going to increase your row count, which shows more and more the more like if I was making a scarf or an afghan, if I keep increasing my row count, I'll have a narrow end over here and a really wide end on the end. So you want to try to be careful about skipping and doubling. Sometimes it just blends in, but if you keep repeating it, it adds up in the end. So it's a little twisty here. See how it like turns? That's just from the tension from going from the chain to the single crochet before. I just pull it straight and look for that V. All right, I'm getting closer to the end again. When I get to the end, it's hard to decipher what's going on. I really don't want to leave a stitch undone, but I also don't want to stitch down the side. I want to make sure I stay on the top of the row. So I think visually I can see and feel one more V stitch right there. So I'm going to go through that. But I don't want to keep going and start crocheting around the back of my crochet fabric. Okay. All right, so I'm at the end of that row, so I'm going to show you turning again. I'm going to flip the whole thing over, right? So over here I'm at the end, right? This is the side that I've completed. When my crochet hook is in my on my non-dominant side, and then if I want to begin the row, I want to flip it over to my dominant hand side. Okay. So when I'm flipped, I need to start with a chain stitch, okay, because that one I need to skip in order to create the height, and I'm just going to go for another row. Oh, that's another mistake. I don't know if you can see that. I went through the instead of under the whole piece of yarn, I went through it, and that's going to create a little bit of a line there. Again, it depends on how you feel about little errors, but and if it makes it hard for you to pull through the string and you don't understand what's going on, why you might feel like you have an extra loop, it may just be that you've split the string. In which case you just take your hook out and pull back or rip back 1 or 2 stitches and have a go at it again. I've done it again. I've caught on. Do you see that extra little bit right there? That's my hook grabbed a little bit of a different string. So I'm going to rip back. I'm going to go back to this loop. That was where the string got split, but it belongs there. I can see it doesn't come from another. It pulls freely. Oh, no, it doesn't belong there. It doesn't pull freely. So by just kind of letting the feed go through, I could tell that this loop was split from some other loop, right? And I think that'll even out. But I've got it straight again. This just goes to this loop that I was through before. I'm just going to let it there. It's going to kind of hide in the fabric. But if I kept it on my hook, it would create some pull in the tension of the string, which may or may not even out later. That's it. We've made another row. And again, I would stop there. See that there's a V there, but there's kind of like an end bit there. It's not a V. So that's how I would know that's the place to stop. Because if I was to try to find a place to put another stitch, I'd be crocheting around the side of it. And then a single crochet. You can turn it over and go again for another row.
And that's single crochet. If you have a little project that you've made and you want to finish it, one thing I should have shown you here in this video, but that's pretty easy to understand, is you'll have that last loop of your last row on your hook still, and you'll be, if you don't fasten it off, it will unravel. So you'll need to snip the string from the feed from your ball, cut it, but leave a, you know, a reasonable length on it. Don't cut it super close. And then just keep pulling the end through the last loop and tighten it, and you'll see it close on itself, and it shouldn't rip back anymore. It should just close. And then just take a yarn needle or even your crochet hook and weave that end, hide it into your fabric of the crochet. And especially if you weave in one direction and then back the way you came, it won't unravel from a washing machine or anything. That's it. You'll have finished your project. Congratulations. I hope to see you for some more Learnuary videos soon.